It's time to take flight with Audio Airstrike.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Everett Hall-McNeill, this is Audio Airstrike, and with me I have my temporary co-host, none other than
Jacob Cooperman.
Yep. So I wanted to just kind of take this time to just talk with you, and first off, I want to thank you for being the temporary co-host.
Kind of crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, we've been at it for a whole month now.
What?
Yeah,
No way.
been at it all for a
How
whole
many
month.
episodes? 10 now? 8?
I haven't kept track. I'll go back and I'll figure it out. I'll
crazy.
let you know. But yeah, it's you've been coming on pretty consistently.
Let's try to stay consistent, yeah.
Yeah, and so definitely appreciate it. So let me ask you this: How are you feeling now versus coming into this new area several months ago?
Feels good. I feel like our chemistry has gotten a lot better. Not that it wasn't before. I think also doing Justice League, our other podcast, helps. But I think just with us, it's gotten a lot more. I've personally gotten more comfortable because I'm used to coming from a show environment where I'm going to be honest, we don't really delve that far into topics unless it's a topic that we're really, well versed in. So some of the stuff I'm not well versed in, but I've done the research, and I feel a lot more comfortable kind of coming in and playing off you. Like one conversation I really enjoyed was our last. Well, I guess this is coming out after the Diddy episode.
Yeah.
So that would be the second to last episode, which was when we talked about Lil Wayne getting snubbed. That was a good conversation because I felt like we keep getting better at being at the flow and kind of throwing jokes in there. And I feel like and you can stop me if you feel differently, but I feel like that's the intangible I bring to the show
I think it's needed because there's been times in the past where when the format was different or depending on what people come on, the show vibe changes. So if I have a guest on and he's more serious and I'm already am serious, we're going to have probably a more serious episode. But if I have somebody cracking jokes, that's a beautiful thing too.
But yeah, I feel like that the backbone of the show doesn't get lost at all.
Yeah.
It's very kind of just, I feel good in that I don't want to take away from anything that you're doing because I've hosted a bunch of shows and produced and ran a bunch of shows, and I know that it's not an easy thing to give up a spot to someone that, we've known each other for like 8 months now, which is crazy to think about, but it's still, there's guys that I've known for way longer that I wouldn't necessarily give a show spot to. So to come in and be able to kind of, it seems like everything's good, it seems like you're happy with it, it's good to kind of just be like a nice addition to a show, and to have that good feeling of like getting back into podcasting because this is probably the most consistently I've podded in a while. I did a lot of short form and kind of commentary stuff and acting, but everyone forgets that I started in podcasting. I mean, I did like combined. I had Spreading the Floor was 57 episodes, and then Jacob Cooperman's show was a little bit under 50. Oh God! Then there's a bunch of other ones that probably will total out to about like 130. So, yeah, that's where I got my start. It's nice to kind of return back to it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Do you think turning back into your talent helped with you kind of like finding that zen, finding that centered, What
do you mean, like turning into what talent?
So you continuing to do a lot of on-air stuff. So we know that you commentate. We know that you have done where you're getting really consistent in the podcast, and you've always done it.
Yeah.
You have a couple of YouTube channels that you are growing as we speak on a repeated basis. Now you're helping out, being a co-host on this one. Is there
got Big
ever
Boys
a
tomorrow
point,
too,
and then you're rolling out another one. Do you feel like that you are burning the candle at both ends in certain moments?
Like I could be exhausting myself?
Potentially.
Yeah. I mean, that's a real concern. That's why I said with Bit Boys not to let you guys in on. Well, they might not. I don't know if you're gonna necessarily. This will kind of be a shameless plug, but we're trying to do a new episode or a new podcast. So this will be episode 1 is tomorrow. If that, depending on how that goes, there's only a finite amount of time now that I have to put towards things. So yeah, that has been a thought where it's like, all right, commentary is the best thing I've got going for me right now. It's the thing I'm getting paid for. And comedy's all right. Acting probably the least strong, or no, I guess it's the least amount of activity that I'm putting towards something.
I think, I'm going to be honest with you, I think you have the chops for acting. You have a look. You have intangible. I'm a director. We have to look.
No, I'm playing. I'm just.
We have to. I'm not the
we love a good pause.
Right.
We love a good pause in the show.
But
I view it as my duty. If I wasn't saying pause, who else would be there to check you?
Well, you are from New York. So.
That's right.
So, one of the things that, I think that you could definitely get into acting more, just so that way you don't burn the candle at both ends. Just get into some shorts here and there.
So you think that let's just say it like this: all the things that I'm doing right now, if you as my friend had to say, and this is not to service my ego, but I've actually wanted to ask you this. I was going to ask you this even if it was off air. What do you think? If I had to do three things, because I'm pretty sure I could do three things realistically without being burnt out and still having time to be a real human being and like hanging out with people, I guess, once a week or something like that. What do you think those three things in terms of getting to the top would be? So there's comedy, acting, commentary, YouTube. I would like to be a motivational speaker at one point. I think I want to, or like at least dabble in it.
Yeah, that will come down the line, but I think that commentary, because that's the thing that's paying. Yeah. That's the thing that's paying.
Yeah.
Your YouTube channel is growing, gloves up. That's another thing. I think that you have room to dabble into acting. I just think that's something that you could probably dabble into. You can go get headshots. You can talk to a photographer, get some headshots done.
Yeah.
Get some, like a head-to-toe shot done, different outfits, whatever you want to do. And then there you go. And then also, between the website and then a couple of other short films that you'll be doing, boom, that's your acting. Yeah. That's your acting website that you can pass along, and then the resume with that. I think that those are the top three things. Now, with that being said, I'm not saying that podcasting is totally out the door. I think you can definitely do that. I think my only concern is you are literally bouncing around five. If I have to, off the top of my head, you are bouncing around 5 different shows.
I still feel like I'm not working hard enough.
So can I ask you a very candid question, right?
Yeah. Let's get
a
deep.
lot of people.
Pause.
A lot of people feel like they're not working hard enough.
Yeah.
And I think me and you are similar, that if we start thinking about the different things that we have going on at times,
we get tied down with it. Yeah.
We get tied down
Absolutely.
with it, and in moments we get overwhelmed, we start to, and then we're down.
Yeah.
With that happening, though, I think sometimes we overthink and almost have imposter syndrome, that we are doing so many different things.
Oh, bro, big time. Yeah. Big time. I mean, dude, like, I was just talking to someone today, and this is something, if you're watching at home, there's always this connotation being put on, seeing your friend succeed. You always got to be happy for them. And I think so, right? Like, because if you're really friends with someone, you should want to see them succeed, right? But then there's also this thing where it's like, I do. So, for instance, I have this friend. He's a really good dude. He came over. He was an immigrant in this country, worked his tail off, started working for, I think, I remember, I can't remember what publication in New York, but he's in the Big Apple right now. He's doing his thing, and he just got on SMY, which, for those that don't know, because I don't know where your listeners are from, probably more so the Maryland, like DMV area.
Potentially.
So SNY, for those that don't know, is the broadcast affiliate for the Mets and the Nets in New York, I think. Or no, excuse me, the Mets and the Rangers. But the point is that it's a big sports website, big sports channel on television. This guy gets on and is talking about the UFC on television, right? And so I sit there and I'm like, I am monumentally happy for that guy. Like, could not be happier. The guy worked it. He deserves it. He worked hard, so many nights just up, came over from another country, went to California, and I'm sure he'd want to tell his whole story for himself. But the point is that he jumped through so many hoops to get to where he is. But there's also that part of me that's like, fuck, like, what am I doing that I'm not where he's at, right? So nobody ever talks about that part. right? Like, I think there's also this connotation that if you think like that, like you're not happy for your friends. I think it could be both at once. But sometimes that sets in, right? Or sometimes it could be, the feeling of imposter syndrome comes from when, I worked with this promotion and they haven't texted me back and they don't want to, that was the big, the opportunity I drove 7 hours for on a dime. They didn't, they haven't hit me back. We were supposed to do a meeting, got disrespected. They haven't, as of this recording. Now I could be wrong, but as of this point, I'm taking it as they just moved on. They don't want anything to do with me. Stuff like that happens. And I'm like, all right, well, am I really as good as I say I am? There's times where rubber bands and I feel like I can do whatever I put my mind to. And most times, there's that intrinsic belief, but then, sometimes, like you said, there's the imposter syndrome. You have days where your friend might get an opportunity that you yourself could say, I see myself there. Or you get a big rejection, and it seeps into your mind. And to your point, it gets going, it cascades, it flows down. And you're starting to feel like, man, like at the very least, I'm doing something wrong. So absolutely, yeah. I mean, I have that, but I think every person that cares has that, right? Like, well, I think the difference between really successful people is the people that just keep on going through that and say like, all right, well, I might not feel like $1 million tonight, but I'm gonna work like I'm $1 million. And that sounds cheesy to say, but that's like sticking a routine. I put in the work so I can be the man that I want to say that I am, even when I don't feel like I'm the man that I am. Because most days, I feel like I'm already there. I feel like I can be a commentator for the UFC. I feel like I can do all these things easily. And then other days, I'm like, man, like I can't do anything right. But the difference is I just put in the same amount of work those 2 days.
So let me ask you this, right?
That's a really long answer to your
No,
question.
I got you. With everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
If, let's say, you get what you want, you commentate for the UFC.
Mm-hmm. Acting, career, hopefully.
Yeah.
Doing comedy spots every once in a while. That
now,
stuff. Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you. I know people that have worked for the bigger sporting companies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not taking a crap on those. I'm just saying the jobs that they had while working for a big sports company was awesome. There's pros and cons to everything. Not everything is all glitz and glamour. The salary may be okay for the moment, but then you sit back over there and you realize once you look at everything, this may not be up to par what you thought it was, or something along those lines.
Sure, yeah.
There's pros and cons to everything. Would you be content if you hit goals with 2 or 1 of the 3 things that you want to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, dude, I think to me it's like a cosmic W because all these things tie into the same thing for me. Podcasting, comedy, acting, commentary is being a person that people come to for entertainment, for enlightenment, or not enlightenment because that sounds douchey, but a trusted voice, being a trusted voice, being a voice that entertains, being a voice that informs, that all ties into that. And if you could pay the bills doing that, that's a cosmic W in my opinion. In anything. If you want to be a rapper, you pay the bills by rapping, cosmic W. You want to be a podcaster, you want to be a director, you pay the bills doing exactly what you love every single day, and you could say that you put in the work to get there, cosmic W. So I'd absolutely be okay with one of them. I also do think, and stop me if this wasn't where you were going with this, is that like it might get to a point where I'm doing all these projects and I'm trying to go down all these different avenues. It might be that I can't meet someone and have a life and have a family. Is that kind of where you were? I'm assuming that's where you're going with it.
I mean, that wasn't on my radar, but that
something
could be
I think about.
question.
Yeah.
Is that something that you think about?
Because absolutely. I mean, not being able to meet someone, especially now, like, and this is gonna sound conceited a little bit or egotistical, but like in my bones, I know that I will make it. In my bones, I'm like more confident about that than I think anything else. One of the fears, and I think I've talked to you about this off mic, is like, all right, what's gonna happen when I do make it, and if I can't meet someone before that, I might be in some real trouble. Because even now, we talked about I put my commentary stuff and my on mic stuff in my profile, and there is that lingering feeling, and I'm not anyone right now. I'm to put it bluntly, kind of a no one in the term of the grand scheme of things. Even now, women are like, "Wow, your job looks good." That's always the opening line I get. You must have such a fun life. Your job looks so cool. Da 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 da. It's never like you have a nice smile. It's never like, oh, you look like a real. So that is something that I've thought about. I also think on the flip side, which is like, to your point about staying busy or being overly busy and not having that life outside of it, I think I kind of am a guy, though, independent of all that other stuff, that just needs to be doing something. Like, any time that I've taken a break from doing stuff, my mental health always goes down the shitter. Always. I'm like a shark. I just need to keep swimming. And if I stop, then I'm toast.
When you are meeting somebody and the conversation goes to what you do versus personality-wise what you are, do you feel like...
Talking about women?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just talking about women, friends, anybody. Do you feel like the depth of whatever, relationship or friendship that you're building with that person, if the side of you that doesn't point out your traits as a human being is not mentioned first, do you feel like you're getting kind of like an inkling, like, okay, this potential connection is only going to be surface level about what I can do talent-wise, versus somebody that actually is going to be like, yeah, I'm just calling to check up on you, see how you was doing?
Yeah, I mean, but that's also that. I think that comes down to me, right? Because I'm not having those conversations where I'm leading off with first. I used to do this a lot, and I learned my lesson is not leading off with what I do, but who I am. Because for a while, what I did was who I was, but not anymore. And I think that kind of comes down to a confidence thing, where it's like, you never, if you're a creative person, I think this is a struggle that a lot of creatives have, because what we make comes from us.
Their identity becomes their profession.
Right. And it's hard not to, I think. Because you Everett Hall-McNeill, put yourself not exclusively, but fully into this podcast every time you do it. I hear the way you talk about it. I see the passion you put into it. You put in the time. I'm assuming, did you make the cover art? You hire someone to do the cover art?
Yeah, we put the cover art together. The video is done by me. The audio is done by me.
Right. Everything you do, this is an amalgamation of you, even down to the lights, even down to the color wave, right? It bleeds Everett. So me knowing you, I know that there's parts outside of that, but I think a lot of times the creatives, and you're going to say this, it is an ego thing. We put a lot of ourselves into it to the point where sometimes it can encapsulate what we are outside of it, right? So I don't lead with what I do now in conversations. In fact, I just tell people I do something menial. Like, I just edit videos for a corporate company. And that sounds, I hate to say it, a lot more boring than like, oh, I do commentary. Oh, I do. It might be more honest work, and it might be work that has more of an impact, but, I kind of tend to lead with, let's just say, my values or, who I am as a person, because it took me a while to realize that just because I did all these cool things and I was good at them, that, I have stuff outside of that, like that people would actually want to be with, like it's not, you aren't just a podcaster. You're a loyal friend. You got a lot of love to give. You're a kind guy. You're funny. You're smart. You've got good principles, right? But I think a lot of creatives, they get lost in saying like, well, I am this because I am good at this. And it's just not the case.
Yeah, I definitely agree, because that's something even I struggled with.
Yeah.
People knew me as the podcaster, the videographer, or filmmaker, and this is a pet peeve of mine. Y'all got to stop. This is just a disclaimer. Please stop calling people that do video work photographers. It's annoying to
Videographers, or cinematographer, I guess.
Yeah, like either there is a difference. If they're a videographer, that's what they are. Stop calling them a photographer.
Well, no, I'm saying they could be either cinematographers or videographers.
Yeah, stop calling them. Just because you see them with a camera does not mean they are strictly photography or, oh, he's a good photographer. Like, for those novice that don't know the terms,
and we
please
know
don't do that.
We know what happens with the difference.
We definitely know the difference. So what I'm saying is that is something that I struggled with, where people will literally view you as you're just this. I have so many different ideas that are outside podcasting, outside of filmmaking. The reason why I don't say them out loud, because I don't need somebody coming up to me and saying, well, that's not your expertise. No crap. At one point, video production was not my expertise.
Yeah.
At one point, podcasting was not my expertise. At one point, trying to figure out what is real estate or what is stocks was not my expertise. But it was something that I took interest in, and I at least want to be knowledgeable of it because it's something that could be worthwhile in the future. When you go after something, I tell people this: be careful who you tell, be careful who you talk with. Because I hate to say this, even some of the people that are your friends, even some of the people that look up to you, even to some people that you look up to, you're going to realize very quickly what they really think about you when you say, I want to pursue this, and they think it's outside of your wheelhouse. Or they're putting their fears on top of what you're trying to do because they weren't successful at it.
It's crazy because that's the other reason I don't lead a lot of times with when I meet new people with what I do or what I'm about is because a lot of people, and I found it even now, where people will, I don't know. I mean, even we had that thing in the elevator earlier where we were just joking around and that woman was like, all right, enough. It was just like that person has so much going on in their day that they had to like stifle the fun. There are people like that that just are kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but energy vampires, I guess, is a good way of describing it. You got to be, I think, it's something that I'm trying to learn because I'm also I get very passionate about what I do. And I've had to learn sometimes the hard way. But it's not something that you can just trot around gallivanting with, talking about what you do. You know, I think it should be, my policy is like, it should be for a select few. So, for instance, you, my buddy Max back at home, Robbie, Ben, Alex, shout out to them. You know, like people that are very close to me. Not even some of my family members get that information because some of them aren't supportive.
And they're not going to understand. They're not going to understand the struggle.
It's one thing, though, if you have someone that's within the industry, you know, I'm not saying throw away all criticism, but, like, you know, people that don't understand, they're not going to be able to fully encapsulate what it is.
Especially if they're not in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's almost like, you know, they're like the family members I talk about, they don't know the first thing about uploading a video, about, like, shooting a video, about the time that it takes to make stuff, and about, like, how, you know, people consume content. So it's like, you know, I could try, and I tried for the longest time to explain things to them. Not that I feel like I'm better than them for having to explain it, but just trying to be like, well, no, look, this is, like, I got like 5,000 views on this video, and I got like, you know, 17,000 on this. I have one video I think that's sitting at 23,000, which I have yet to crack, but I'm like, look, like 23,000 people saw this, and they're like, well, yeah, you like, didn't you just, like, you sat in front of a camera and said things. Like, they don't get
the effort put in to make that happen.
And how big of a deal that is that, like, you know, 23,000 people saw a thumbnail that they liked enough to click on it, which I think is kind of weird too. Like, I guess it's one of, you know, it's a one of one example, but I feel like a lot, and it is kind of, I'll just be honest, it's people from the older generations. I feel like not our generations, but, you know, the generations before that, they don't, unless it's like numbers based, they don't really have they have a hard time like quantifying things. If you're not getting paid for stuff and you don't have a massive audience, then they're like, why is it worth your time? Which is like, you know, I don't know.
But the thing
that, stupid.
And I'm going to be honest with you, and I was talking with a buddy of mine that is, your friends are never, the people that know you from humble beginnings are never your target audience. They are never going to understand. They are going to scratch their head. They are going to be the last ones to the party when you finally get successful.
Well, what do you mean by people from humble beginnings? Because aren't those people you want to keep around? You talking about close friends?
I'm talking about people that, I'm not talking about necessarily your close friends. I'm talking about the people that happen to be around you when you were coming up.
Oh, yeah.
That they're not going to
people
figure
can
that
kick
out.
Rocks, dude.
Even some parents are not going to realize what you're trying to do because that opportunity wasn't available to them. So they don't know the struggles of putting a YouTube channel together and coming up with a fancy thumbnail to get people to click and at least to hear the information.
Yeah,
or
and
hear
to
what you
stay
gotta
for the
say.
first 60 seconds.
And then to stay not only for the first 60 seconds, but then to have to do a call to action, have them feel invested enough to be like, you know what, I'm going to subscribe to this person.
Yeah.
That takes years to develop a YouTube channel. And they don't understand that because they were taught,
Go to the factory.
I go to work. No, I go to work or go to a trade school. I go to work or something like that. I get a check for them every 2 or 3 weeks. And that's how I make my bread. And then I pay my bills and then I try to save or do whatever with the rest. They're used to the cookie cutter and just straight down the middle American way of getting money. This whole content creation thing is new to them. Truth be told, content creation is not even new. Content creation has been around arguably since I was 17 or 18 years old.
How long ago was that?
I would even say before that. So we talking when YouTube was established in 2006.
It's been a while, man.
So content creation itself isn't even.
I guess on the levels that it is now, where you can get
Yeah.
deals and brands, and
Now it's at another level where heads can get $1 million deals off brands, and people can sell different products or different tutorials on stuff or different any type of product, merch or stuff of that nature. Now it's gotten to that point where the streamers can literally get a rapper on, an actor on, and stuff of that nature. Now we at that point where now the upper echelon of entertainment is recognizing that streamers and podcasters have an ear to the ground of what the people want.
way
So
more
let's
than
touch
they ever
that.
could, though.
Way more than they ever could. So now I got this person that's from the same area I'm from. I'm going to go on this podcast. It's going to be a good look, not just for the city, but then his fan base can merge with mine.
My fan base.
Her
I'm
fan
surprised
base can
with-
merge with mine.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised with that. When I say legacy media, for all those that are listening, legacy media refers to television, radio, and essentially like mainstream stuff. So stuff where you don't own your IP. You get picked up by a radio station or a television show, or you go on SNL as a cast member. I'm surprised more members of legacy media haven't. I know there's a thing where they're probably a little bit threatened by it, but just kind of embrace it, I feel like, would be the best course of action, because I know plenty, like if Jake Gyllenhaal started streaming, I would want to, it's a random name to throw out, but if any of these A-list actors that have came up through the system, or singers and songwriters and rappers are better about it, I think, than other areas like actors, and
Because they have a built-in fan base that's going to watch everything they do anyway.
Yeah.
So they can make money.
you could say the same with actors. Like the thing I despise the most is when there's like an edit of an actor, or like this actor slaying for 9 minutes. I'm just like, oh, dude, to have that much, like, where you could say anything that's not even fun. I'm not trying to be a hater. I sound like a hater. But like an actor will breathe a certain way, and everyone will be like, oh my God, she did it again. Oh my God, look at it. And they'll put it in like slow motion. They'll like deep fry it on Instagram. To have that level of interactivity, I can only dream of. I guess I got to get up to that point where I have that. But man, like, if they were to stream, I think a lot of these people don't understand that they would have at least 100,000 off bat.
Yeah, I definitely think they could.
Like at the top level, obviously it varies, but like, I don't know, John Bernthal, who I've been watching a lot of recently, he did his own podcast. That's actually a solid listen. So like there's people that are coming around to it, but yeah, to your point of not enough people are really embracing that type of vibe.
It's just one of those things where it's like certain people are called to do certain things and certain people are not.
Yeah.
Like when I was coming up in school, there wasn't a lot of people interested in filmmaking. There wasn't a lot of people interested in radio. People wanted to either be a doctor, lawyer, a business person,
Athlete.
an athlete. These are the things that were in. I picked a format of creativity, art, entertainment that people saw as where the income gonna come from.
Same thing with podcasting. I remember when I first started doing podcasting, that was before Spotify was handing out money to podcasters like it was raining.
Mm-hmm.
They were like Oprahing It was like you get 500 million, you get 20 million. I was like, where's Spotify getting all this money from?
Right.
To just give to artists like. But I remember thinking like, man, like I want to become a famous podcaster, but A, there's no way to judge how famous of a podcaster is, and B, there's no way to make it a full time. And now it's like I don't know if you saw it. You keep up with like the Hawk Tua girl.
Yeah, I've seen it.
She made a podcast called Talk Tua.
Yeah.
Every clip I've seen is not great, but people watch it because it's the hot Tua girl, you know, and she wants to talk to her.
I'm gonna be honest with you. All it takes is one incident. Now,
Yeah.
somebody can be
And no disrespect, no hate, by the way. If she can get the money, get the money. But
no hate at all. Get your money as long as you're doing ethically. That's fine. Like what she did. As
I don't see
funny as
anything
it was. I didn't see anything wrong with it either. It was ethically. She's taking advantage of the opportunity. People want to see her. It's like, okay, you just had a breakthrough by saying a funny line in front of a video. Go forward with it. Like, do the interviews.
Yeah.
Create your own podcast. Create your own merch. Do it.
Even the merch line was such a smart idea.
Right. It was definitely a smart idea. It was, and they got to it fast. It was like, we're in a hot moment right now. We need to press about 100 or however many of those shirts right now. Can we get it done in 2 days? And literally, you had people walking around with them shirts.
Yeah.
Having them on. People in the offices having those on.
In our office?
Well, not in our office.
I was about to say.
I'm just saying in general. But
spit on that thing in a corporate office is crazy.
But one of the things that, you know, I always, you know, honor is that somebody can blow up, but if they take the right steps, they can make a serious income off of that and become somebody of influence, which is pretty cool to see.
Well, I'd imagine like with the Hawk Tua girl, just not to harken back to that, but I think what made her rollout so good was, you talked about it, right? The printing of the shirts, right? Because those, I checked the page because I was going to pick up a shirt for myself. No, I'm just kidding. I wasn't actually going to, but
Not surprised.
Nobody in the comments could believe me, by the way. Everyone's gonna be like, he was definitely going to buy a shirt. All those were like, those joints were like $40-$60 for like a shirt like this. Like not crazy good quality, but you know, still nonetheless, they were selling like hotcakes. Some of them were sold out. So she then uses that money. Figure she made what, 200, 300K off of that at low point.
Yeah, something right here.
Oh yeah, 200, 300 low point. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Then she uses that to start, you know, paying off whatever and like opening up a podcast studio. Then she has Talk to it. I want to see. I'm gonna check. Oh shit! I'm gonna check my phone because I'm curious to see what the subscriber count on that is looking like. Because I do want to see. I want to see how many subscribers she has. A lot of people are really giving it a lot of hate, but Talk to it. Let me see.
I mean, they can give it a lot of hate, but the reality of the situation is she made something for herself. How many subscribers she got?
That's interesting. So she has 50,000, but she has 2 episodes. Both are really doing great numbers-wise. She has her grandma on there. That got 169,000. And then Whitney Cummings, which I think she's also going to get a lot of backing, too, because that's another genius part of her rollout was she was hanging out with Shaq. She was hanging out with all these celebrities. That really boosted her profile. So, yeah, her podcast, by all accounts, doing well, you know.
It is doing well. Look, if you have 50,000 people devoted and ride with you, and they're engaging,
well, it's
that's
50...
better. That's better than 1 million people not engaging with your content.
Well, also, that's the other thing that I've learned about subscriber counts is like I like to think that I have a fairly, over on Gloves Up, I have a fairly interactive audience that will comment, or at least like I have a personality in which people feel the need, whether it's good or bad, to comment, and I'll get some repeated commenters. I think that there are some subscriber counts, though, let's just say her 50,000, that really boil down to like 35 to like 30,000 actual devoted listeners. And maybe the other 15,000 are just like, let me see where this goes.
Oh, the casuals, yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder what you make of that idea where it's like some audiences now might just be, you know, to your point, I think it's better to have a small and niche audience. Like Rory and Maul, they have they get consistently 15,000 on their pod. But they have Patreon stuff. They're signed to deals, so they're good. You know, I'd rather have that than the Hawk Tua show or whatever.
Well, I mean, they also have a fan base that they developed on their own as
Joe
well.
Budden, yeah.
They have that. As much as stuff went left, and they're not really talking to them anymore. The reality situation is that people really liked those two, and when they left, a part of that audience still devoted their time to see what they were going to do, and still was supportive of that.
I was the biggest Joe hater after that happened.
I definitely could understand why. I can understand why you would feel that way because of everything, how everything looked, and then you know what I mean. But I think looking back on this situation, I think the biggest thing that it taught me when that happened, and this is where I want to ask you another question in terms of like creative differences.
Yeah.
When folk have creative differences, so in your brain, you think that this IP is going this way. Mm-hmm. In that other person's brain, this IP is going this way over here. And that kind of butts heads over time. In the past, even with this show, like, have there been creative differences? There was, but I wasn't in the middle of it. I was on the outside of it because it was, and I'm candid on this show, those individuals are good now. But at the time, those two individuals had creative differences that boiled over, got personal, and then it affected the show in a way. That I was trying to lead by example and be like, this is how we're going to handle it. This is how we're going to handle it, not in a dictatorship way, but more of a mediator way, like, hey, please articulate what you got to say to each other so this tension doesn't show up on the podcast. I don't have a problem with y'all arguing your viewpoints about whatever topic we do, but when I'm seeing the tension on every episode in the past show up, I have to now intervene because now it's affecting the show. That's something that I've gone through. How do you handle having creative differences?
I think it's like also, so I'll use the backbone of the Joe Budden podcast. I think where it starts, and this might be a hot take, I know because everyone loves to say that like these guys that start a podcast, guys like Abba and Preach. I remember also, and I'm not going to get too much off on a tangent, but like Abba and Preach, when they said that they're not really friends off mic, like a lot of people got really, really like, oh my God, how could you possibly? And it's like, a lot of these people don't, like, I remember the podcast I did with my old boy, Nigel, like we were good off mic. Like the way we talked on mic, you would have thought that we were like best friends, and we were close, sure, but we weren't hanging out 24/7. Like there were most weeks where the time we'd see each other was like the pod, especially towards the end. The pod. There was times now when doing the Jake and Josh show where, and that's part of the reason we kind of like stifled out was because Josh and I were like, well, we don't want our podcast, our friendship to just be this podcast. I think a lot of people, when they get into a partnership on a show, the show kind of becomes, because you are talking, all-encompassing. Or maybe you guys weren't really necessarily friends to begin with. Now, I'm not saying that's the case with Josh and I or Nigel and I, but what I am saying is you should get into business on creative ventures with people that you know there can be that safety net there. Like Maul talked a lot about not knowing, oh, I never thought Joe would say this, and Rory being like, I never thought Joe would say it. It's like, well, did you not? Because you guys were friends with him. You guys knew you had to know what you're getting into because Maul talked a lot about Joe's shady business dealings in the past, right? So it's like, I think number one off the bat is knowing who you're going into a podcast with, right? Like, I wouldn't have done this if I felt like it was going to be something where it got in the way of our friendship off mic. Mm. Like, this is something that we do once a week, but this is not the only time we hang out. Like, we go and get food other nights of the week. We talk at work. We do this different type of stuff. I think that's number one. And then if there is creative differences, like I remember Josh and I'm also a very open and honest host. Like, Josh kind of wanted to make the switch towards more enlightening stuff or more serious topics. And I argued that some of our bread and butter was kind of more... Like, Josh wanted to get a lot of guests on to talk about, mental health stuff and all this different type of stuff. I'm definitely more, I like to kind of be comedic more than I think I like to be serious, which is just a me thing. I think there's times to be serious, but I think we'd already had a certain type of audience that was there for the jokes. We'd had people reach out to us say, like, you guys are hilarious, keep doing your thing. So that's kind of what I argued with him. But since I knew who I was getting into business with, the respect was already there to say, like, all right, bro, well, listen, if we can't come to an agreement, I don't want to lose you more than I want to lose this show. So I'm going to, if we have to stop the show for a little bit, fine. Boom, done. Now, again, I know it's different on a bigger stage, but I'm saying, like, on my level, there should be something there. And I think even on the Joe Budden podcast, there should have been that thing there where they could have stopped the podcast for a little bit if they were truly friends. Same thing with the Bodega Boys, where they were truly friends to say, like, okay, we need to take time to figure this out as friends rather than business partners. And I think that a lot of people don't have that backbone there. I think a lot of people get swept up in the fact that they can talk to people well on mic and have that be that. And they really do lose sight of the friendship if it was ever there in the first place. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. It's one of those things where at first the idea is, well, I'm going to do it with my friend because I trust him. But then here comes the endorsement deals. Then comes, okay, you contributed to this podcast. Now you worry about the splits. Now you worry about the business side of stuff. And if those things aren't addressed, like when I came up to you, it was like, look, I haven't had a co-host since roughly 2018 and 2019. So I haven't had a co-host since then. And I told you my reasons, and I told you why.
Yeah.
And we also had a conversation about why I wanted to put you in as a temporary co-host. With that being said, I told you exactly the reason why I wanted to put you in there, also the parameters, and also like, hey, this is the parameters that we can work in. If you want to bring a topic in, cool, no problem. And I talked about the reason why I was going about it that way and the concerns. So that way you knew upfront what you were getting into, and there wasn't this thing where it's like smoke and mirrors. Everett promised me a certain equity of audio Airstrike, and now I'm gonna get at it. It was never that. I was very honest about, look, let's do this temporarily, see where it goes, and just go from there.
Yeah.
That's literally what it was. So it's very important to have these conversations, because if you don't say anything and just roll with something, people's expectations aren't checked.
It could be a really good friend too. And this is kind of like to your point and expanding on your point. This is the other side, right? We're not the other side, but this is taking it a step further. It's like, even if you go into business with a really good friend, there's that old adage that you shouldn't go into business with friends, because when that other stuff gets introduced, you don't know how people are going to react. And that's not to say that automatically makes the person that you were friends with, things started tensions. That's not to say that they were a snake. Mm-hmm. Like, best friends can be divided by money, because it becomes this thing where if you're the person that came in on the project, let's just say you're the Rory to someone's Joe, and you're like, well, man, we've been friends forever. And like, I get it, that's your show, but I helped build it, and you're not paying me what I think I'm supposed to be. Then it becomes a thing. So there's also the aspect of the emotional, and rather than the business dealings, that kind of comes to the forefront a lot of times. So I think it's just a solid amount of planning and really just being able to trust and have those difficult conversations, because it's clear, going back to the Joe Budden podcast, that nothing really was getting discussed. And I put that more on Joe, because it seemed like he was kind of just like, to be honest, this is my... Actually, I'm curious to hear your perspective, because you're also a big fan of the show. I think Joe kind of had his head up his own ass once, like after the Spotify deal, and people were making pieces calling him the Howard Stern of hip-hop, and he was getting... he said he was raining M's from everywhere. I think that really got to his head, and I think it allowed, or it stalled a lot of conversations that the guys could have had about having those more difficult type talks.
I mean, when I heard Joe kind of admit that maybe he could have articulated stuff better. I think that's where he could have improved on, was articulating in the middle of him dealing with the hurt of, dang, this podcast as I know it is not about to be the same. And it's turbulent right now.
Yeah.
I think him being in the leadership role that he was in, I think he could have articulated stuff more, or at least had tried to kind of like in fine tune and articulate, hey, like, this is what's going on. This is what's going on. These are the expenses. This is what you guys are getting paid. If the sheet or the accounting doesn't look right to you, what can we do to, like, I've given y'all this sheet to look at. What about this sheet isn't right? Tell me so I can articulate to me what isn't right about it so I can do.
And even if it is right, and
right.
you could be like, well, this is why it's right. It doesn't have to be like,
right.
you know. And again, it's all say, or it's all hearsay. But you know, Rory, if what Rory said was true, which is like he asked about it and then got yelled at over the phone, that's just horrible communication.
Yeah. Sometimes it got to be. I've gotten further to somebody with a calm demeanor and being like, look, this is what's going on. This is where we're at. And I'm telling this over the phone so you understand. And I tell people, I'm not raising my voice, because at that point, you're going to be focused on the fact that I yelled at you versus what I'm actually saying. If you get into something that I think is shady and wrong, and I yell at you, yeah, I'm saying what needs to be said, but now you worried about how I'm saying it versus what I'm saying.
Yeah. It could go the other way, too, if you're saying it too measly.
Yeah, if I'm beating around the bush, it's like, Everett, get to the point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the reality of the situation is I think the reason why people still talk about that potential breakup is there were so many moments of hurt, miscommunication, and I hate to say it, just no deliberate practices on how to handle when people are stressed or when people are dealing with certain things business-wise. Like, I feel like there wasn't a proper HR or liaison to really be like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like that was missed. And I don't think it should have been somebody's manager, because the manager is looking at this like, oh, it's wartime and I'm going to defend my client.
Ian?
It could be Ian. It could be whoever ended up being. I don't know if Rory and Maul had a manager, their own manager at the time. I think they were just doing it without them. I don't know. I don't know the inner workings in those conversations when that record button was off. But I mean, a manager is going to look out for the client that's paying them, or they're going to do things within. Ian is going to move in Joe's best interest, as he should. Mm-hmm. And Joe's going to listen. They have a good friendship and a good business relationship that they lean on each other for advice. I think that in those situations, you need somebody, whether it's an HR person, whether it's somebody that can be in the middle, that can communicate well, to figure out and mend certain things. I'm not saying for them to be the peacemaker, but to make sure that the communication is key.